Welcome back to Seattle Sucks, podcast about hating the city we love.
Sure is.
Energy's high.
Yeah.
Energy's high on the boat.
Damn. Yeah, we're coming out shooting. It's me, Colin. I'm joined here with Greg.
Yeah,
and...
that's Captain Greg to you.
God damn it, last episode you said you dropped the captain. I'm trying to be respectful to you, man. I was following your orders.
Swab the dick, Colin.
God damn it. And our great friend, Brian Platt.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
That's
and our
first mate. I don't know what are other boat titles.
You definitely outranked me.
Our new official co-host.
Yeah.
He has a permanent invitation to the boat now. So
what a mistake on Greg's part.
So it's all cops all the time.
Yeah.
Which is basically life in America.
This is also a 50% cops podcast and a 50% squatters' rights podcast.
Whoa, what are the squatters' rights on a boat? Like, just there's so many empty boats that just people go to twice a year, and people do this. You can sneak on a boat and live there for weeks at least.
Doesn't sound bad.
Yeah. And then, you could just leave the dock with it, too, and,
never come back.
No one would know.
Well, if you were on it for, weeks, how would anybody know it wasn't your boat? Everybody would just be like, oh, he's taking his boat out.
Yeah. Now, there's always a dockmaster around somewhere who somehow knows everybody. But, you just lay low. And then, But if you just take the boat out one day...
Yeah, nobody would notice.
And it's not someone that... the dockmasters or the other people in the marina are going to go wait, they're out of town. They didn't take their boat out. There's a lot of boats you could take and no one would know for months.
Hot tip for the listeners right here.
Yeah.
There's a lot of boats that nobody would notice when they disappeared.
Yeah. Check it out.
In 600 seconds.
I drove Lyft for 60 hours last week. And it turns out that though up to about 45 hours, because you have to amortize a bunch of costs over that, your hourly rate ends up going up the more you do, and to get over the Seattle minimum wage of $15, you got to put in at least pretty much 40. 45, it pretty much tops out at $16 an hour, because after that, that's the first time I've done 60 full fucking hours to get all the bonuses for the week. 120 rides. And I got away with more money than I brought in previous weeks, but at about $16.50 an hour. But that's below minimum wage ultimately, because I'd have to figure that out, but the overtime, that doesn't count
you're not
for
getting
my
your time
overtime.
and a half. Yeah.
I'm not getting time and a half on that 20 hours.
Well, that's because you're a contractor.
Yeah.
Right, well, yeah.
And that you're independently controlling your life.
I'm an entrepreneur.
You're what Jefferson would have... You're Jefferson's yeoman farmer.
Yeoman driver.
So you're a yeoman driver, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeoman cabbie.
Yeah.
Up until the weather got warmer, I was dressing like Travis Bickle when I did it.
That rules.
Too. Mm-hmm. But it's too hot for a field jacket at this moment. Though, actually, if I went full mohawk, that might balance that out.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Anyway, so I'm fucking wiped. I can barely concentrate, so...
Cool.
I had to turn in...
Thanks, that's so if you're hearing that, listener, you maybe skip to the next episode. I don't know.
Well, you know what I'm thinking, Brian? I think this is a perfect time for mutiny.
The true captain's awake at all times.
All right. Swig your sodas and let's move on.
Fine.
Both of my co-hosts are double fisting liters of two different kinds of soda.
There you go. Satisfying.
We got Colin doing... You could just bring 1 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew and drink that.
But they don't actually sell that at the Upper Crust Met Market in Magnolia.
Oh, that's too much?
Yeah.
In Magnolia, you only drink... It's just a little treat.
Well,
or you share that with the family.
This is all you can get.
Yeah.
There's no 2 liters.
There's no 2... You gotta go to the QFC for
that's funny, because at the QFC you can get the 2-liter. But you gotta go to a Walmart if you want the 3-liter.
Yeah.
Holy shit. There's a
You've never seen a 3-liter?
That's how they used to always sell them, yeah. It was very weird when I came here and they were all 2 liters. Yeah, apparently you go to Walmart, you get the extra liter. I gotta tell you, in the South, you always get the extra liter. The 3-liter is standard.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Hell yeah.
Gross. And then, of course, now Brian rocking 2 liters of cherry Coke.
Actually 2 pints, my friend. 2 pints.
Ooh, nice.
It's pretty close.
Not even adding up to 1 liter combined. Learn your fucking lunar conversion.
Alright, fine, whatever. They look big. They're tall boys, whatever that is.
They're tall boys.
Okay. Cool. So
So anyway.
Oh man, should we start over? I'm just kidding. Yeah, so welcome, Brian. There's a bunch of policing stuff that's been happening. It's been just a really wild time, but could you tell us about the mayor's latest harebrained scheme with respect to policing in some of our fine neighborhoods?
I'd love to, Colin.
Thank you.
Yeah, the mayor, to kick off summer, is launching a series of what she likes to refer to as emphasis patrols.
that is
Yeah.
what emphasis patrols? That just
bold, italicized,
that's
underlined.
question mark. That's all. Like that's like. How do you hear? Like that means nothing.
Oh, yeah.
What emphasis on what, Brian? Emphasis on what?
I'd love to tell you. So, apparently, the city council was also surprised by this. This apparently was unilaterally done by the mayor.
Oh, weird.
And when the city council asked the SPD about it, SPD didn't really have a good reason either of why this was happening. But basically, if you live in a neighborhood with a strong Safe Seattle presence, or, I don't know, if you're in a neighborhood and you pop onto your Nextdoor app, and there's lots of complaints about teens walking in front of your house, then the police are going to be in your neighborhood. So, in order to respond to neighborhood associations and businesses, which she's very explicit about, like this is to, for neighborhood association and business groups, she is sending extra police out to neighborhoods. When asked about, like, why are you doing this when crime's actually going down in the neighborhoods she's sending them to, she said, well, it's about people's feeling of crime.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is progressive.
I can't
because
believe she didn't
now-
dodge that, though.
Now,
No, not at all.
well, I think what she's saying is like, listen, we got to shut these people up somehow. This is a charitable reading I'm going to give it. But really, it's a progressive thing because what she's doing is now these neighborhoods of white homeowners will now be policed at a level
Proportional
to like lower income non-white neighborhoods.
Yeah,
so
but that
we're all equally oppressed now.
that policing will not be like meted out proportionally.
That is probably true. Just a guess, yeah.
Yeah, so interestingly, that same week, it came out, a report was given to the judge regarding Seattle's consent decree with the Seattle Police Department, and there was a report on the sort of racial demographics of stops in Seattle, and wouldn't you know it, that when it comes to stopping people and searching them on the street, Seattle PD just has a real uncanny ability to find every black person in Seattle to check. And as the report goes on, it's especially strange given that black people are found to have weapons far less than white people in these searches, but Seattle PD still insists on searching black people almost exclusively. They threw in the little tidbit, too, that when these conflicts on the street escalate and police pull guns out on people, it's almost entirely on black people. So
these are all surprising findings that I find totally shocking.
Exactly.
My eyes are being opened, Brian. Thank you.
So yeah, and one thing about this is that if you were to go back and read the 2011 federal investigation of SPD, this is exactly the findings they had. So 8 years on, after so much hand-wringing and whatever, what we've found is that SPD actually has not changed in any noticeable way. But
cops are cops, is
yes,
what you're saying.
Exactly. But the emphasis patrols, I mean, the importance of this is they're out to go do broken windows policing and go, like, look, basically to kick the homeless off the street corners. But every encounter these people have with police opens up the opportunity for a tragedy, right?
Yeah,
for them to seriously hurt somebody or kill somebody. And we know who they target now. We actually, I mean, none of these are unknowns, and
well,
we're
they're not
going to
be targeting the homeowning residents, so that's going to make all their time available to fuck with
like 5 people.
Right,
Probably,
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I've been out driving Lyft,
Yeah.
and until Brian told us about this today, I was very confused about what I've been seeing in those neighborhoods.
Saw the coppers.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit! In 2 instances, once at the top of Queen Anne, on Queen Anne, where it doglegs, I don't know. Like, I had to drive around it because that dogleg there, because there. And I saw it from 2 sides because I drove around it, but I had to go around the block. And it was clearly just like a fender bender. Like there was an accident. This would look like, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there was a gun battle that I don't know about. You guys
a classic Seattle gun battle.
And,
But what it looked like was an accident. And I have that's it. And the cars were off on the side of the road. Actually, a bus might have been involved in this one. Because there was a bus around. I don't know. But the Queen Anne Avenue in the middle of the late afternoon, was police taped off for an entire block, and there were 7 police cars just everywhere.
Oh, you know
traffic.
what? Shit. I actually know what happened.
What?
I saw a tweet about this. A Mercedes, it looked like, at least if the picture was from the scene, hit some pedestrians. So that's probably what it was.
Ugh, that sucks. Even so, there were
a lot of cops.
There were 7 cruisers.
Yeah.
Of course, they're new. Like, it's really like a suburban mom car, but it's closer than a Crown Vic to a Hummer.
Right.
Their new Explorers in midnight blue. By the way, they decided when they went to get new cars, they're going to change from the classic Ford color of the metal flake sky blue that made Seattle police cars look comparatively tame compared to like black and whites, and LA County or something, which look absolutely militaristic.
They look like orca whales.
Okay.
Apex predators.
I know those big numbers on them, and they're terrifying. But now they're like, no, we want something. We want to be tougher. So they have their Ford Explorers because they don't want to roll around Focuses apparently. Yeah. And in midnight blue. Anyway, this is a tangent, but there were 7 cruisers.
Yeah.
And same thing off Dravis in Inner Bay. There was what looked like just a fender bender pulled off to the side of the road, not on Dravis, just by the QFC, on whatever road is to the west of the QFC, and again blocked off. Time to get out the tape, and block off the road, and they're literally just surrounded by 7 or 8 cruisers.
Yeah, we have too many police officers.
No, I've heard tell many times that we're short.
It's an extinction event. We're living
no,
through.
we're down 1,000 police officers.
Yeah, but there's 50 at every event. But and I think that this story, I think it's interesting about it is it's clearly, it could not be more clear that this is to appease Safe Seattle, right? And they completely circumvented...
the homeowner class.
Yeah, and they completely circumvented the city council who Safe Seattle is convinced is, the Comintern. And so, Mike O'Brien, who Safe Seattle hates specifically, was like, what the fuck is going on? Why are you doing this?
Because he laughed at that lady.
Basically. Lorena Gonzalez basically sent, a list of questions to Durkan, being like, why are you doing this? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And, and to the Seattle Times credit, they actually, asked her, crime's down in all these neighborhoods, why do this? Which her response was, she told him, quoting, the data tells you one thing, but then you go and walk the neighborhood and you talk to people.
What the fuck?
A thing she's definitely done. Anyway.
And talking with other people associated with this, they say, however, you go to those neighborhoods and talk to citizens, that's not the perception they have that crime is down, right? So this is just indulging their fantasies of...
What she means is you watch Safe Seattle, and you hear the cranks in it talking about how they feel about their neighborhood, and then you give away the frame. This is what we talked about when she did.
Yes, exactly
So this is her... This is the this narrative of Seattle police are not being allowed to do their jobs. And this is the mayor going, gosh, you're right. Well, here they are. Here's the cops doing their jobs in your neighborhood really visibly.
Well, in the SPD's assistant chief said a decision was made to see what we can do to drive some of the crime numbers down, but also to reduce the fear of crime, which the crux of this is you can't reduce the fear of crime in these like middle-class homeowners' heads. Like, because it's this bug that lives in their brain that like a person that isn't exactly like them exists on the planet.
Because there's more security people can have. Like, if that bug, this brain disease is so strong that is, the more money people have to secure themselves, the more they will spend. These people would all love to move into gated communities with full-time patrols.
Yeah, if they could, they'd have a bug-out location.
They'd a moat with like machine gun nests as well. Like,
and at the end of the article in the last 2 paragraphs, they really hint at what this is actually about too, which is the police chief emphasizes that the emphasis program is separate from the programs for cleaning out homeless encampments, but then says, yeah, but there might be some overlap. So, this is to clear out the homeless encampments, right? I mean, there's like no if anybody. They're getting rid of the homeless. And again, the danger of these people coming into contact with the police shows up again and again, from John T. Williams, who was murdered by a Seattle police officer during rush hour as he was crossing the street. And 2 years ago, during the cleanup of an encampment in downtown Seattle, a police officer shot somebody during the clean out of the encampment and killed them. So, these aren't, it's not a small thing to put police in contact with these communities because the police hurt them and kill them.
If Durkan's serious about allaying these people's fears, right, that is what it will take. What they want is for all of the homeless people living on the sidewalks and cramming themselves into the negative space of the Ballard neighborhood, they want them gone. They want them rounded up and tossed the fuck out. Yeah. Out or in. One of those. Out of the city or into prison. One of those. And this... it just sounds like obviously that's where this is going. Like, this is the first, toe to... the first tippy toe, in the water of reversing the current policy of... kind
of de-escalation against policing homeless people.
Yeah, and allowing some people to fucking exist in the city where, since there's no other fucking way for them to live, allowing them to live in some of these places, even though the city's always been clearing out some of these encampments, but presumably there's some internal logic to which ones and when, but largely there are lots of people living in certain places on the street, and Safe Seattle people are not wrong that the police are not just out in force cleaning the street every day, making sure this can't happen. They're right about that, and thank God. But if this sounds like the first step toward that.
Well, I think you're right, because the only thing that can happen here is escalation. Because
that's what this is.
Well, completely
emphasis.
because it's not going to solve this problem, and if it doesn't solve the problem, then these people will think that we need more police.
Yeah.
And this is what the council election obviously is going to be about this time around, which is a more militaristic response to the homeless. Yeah. And, they're not going to solve the problem. I mean, it was interesting. Colin, I think you had drawn our attention to that Safe Seattle post where somebody from Safe Seattle was like, I went and talked to the homeless today. Yeah. And he brings up these 3 guys they talked to, and he mentions that 2 of them had jobs or whatever. And the people on the Safe Seattle Facebook page were in full meltdown at that very concept that a homeless person would have a job.
Yeah, they were disgusted that there might be a sous chef that didn't have a home that was cooking their meal.
Well, they live in this fantasy world that that everybody's homeless doesn't work. Yeah, actually, a large number of the homeless do work. Yeah. And so that was obviously their brains couldn't handle that kind of and at the same time too, their instant response was, well, that guy should be fired for being homeless, which shows you too how they see the homeless, which they see them as bugs. They're they don't see them as human beings who are down on their luck or whatever, right? Yeah.
Or who could get back on their feet.
Yeah. They see them as
not saying, oh, even if you think most of them aren't working, you could go, and when you're confronted with the reality of one individual with a job, you could go, well, good for him. I hope that gets him off the street.
Yeah. Yeah. The response wasn't like, wow, that's fucked up that you could have a job here and not be able to, like, live in a house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
be on the
really
streets.
fucking weird.
Yeah, that's crazy. The response was, they should fire that guy since he's homeless.
Yeah, because there's no way he could be clean. It's impossible for him to be clean enough to be cooking my food.
Although, ironically, I loved all the service workers that responded really like, oh, wow, you should never go into the back of a kitchen, like, ever. You can be real surprised about who works back there.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, restaurants aren't for the
I think
germaphobe.
they all think it's prim and proper, like charm school graduates or something. It's like I think you can be real surprised about who works in restaurants. But
Totally.
Also, if you're that kind of person who's like, that person should be fired for being homeless, you have like given off that same vibe to service workers in other ways, and they have literally shit in your food.
Oh yeah. You have eaten a startling amount of like pubic hair and human feces,
and just they are stirring your fucking soup with the fingers that were in their own ass.
Because that's how she likes it.
Because you were that person in that restaurant.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, to get off of that for a second, but I mean, to get back to this, I think that the thing has to be understood about Mayor Ginny pursuing this too is that the thing that we don't talk about all that much is that Ginny Durkan is one of the richest people in the city.
Yeah.
She's extremely wealthy. So this is her goal too. Like, the extermination of the homeless has got to be like number one on her to-do list.
Yeah, because it's the most embarrassing thing, probably, to her administration.
Right, and that's how... Well,
when she has home values she wants protected, and multiple home values she wants protected.
I mean, I'm sure being a liberal... a big city liberal, she wouldn't think that she thinks about it that way. But she would think about it like this is an embarrassment to the city. This isn't the city that we can be.
We're a world-class city.
Exactly.
Shit
like that,
slum.
Yeah, the NHL team is going to be so embarrassed when they see this. I mean, I'm sure she, like, justifies it in her own mind in some insane way, but the problem is the end result's always the same, right?
Yeah, fascism.
Yeah. So
the new liberal fascism.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it is kind of astonishing to hear the city council basically come out and be like, this is fucking crazy. What's happening?
Yeah, well, that makes
and not just roll with it.
Makes me wonder if this is retaliation for them not confirming her pick for human resources executive. Like, she wrote a pretty scathing memo to them, basically saying, "Fuck you, you fucked me."
Yeah.
I'm just
the word process was thrown around in scare quotes.
Whatever process that you are using, which was hilarious.
And a clear schism has been driven between the mayor and the council, and the mayor is clearly trying to pull, like, the reactionary elements of the city under, which makes sense because she's a fucking cop. So, like, of course, like, she instinctively like grabs the most reactionary people she can find,
and the cops, like,
and the
to
cops,
her,
right.
the cop, she has been like.
And I think we talked about this a little bit. Like, Mayor Durkan, like, her name in this city, when she was a U.S. attorney here in this district, she protected the police during this investigation the entire time. That
the consent decree investigation.
Yeah, during the consent decree. Her job has been protecting the SPD the entire time and throwing people under the bus. The mayor at the time, Mike McGinn in particular, but... like, she has been their knight in shining armor who has constantly given them cover, constantly hid things, constantly covered for. And it's, so it's not shocking to see this alignment, but,
she's a cop. She's a prosecutor. She's a cop,
yeah. So, I mean, but yeah, so,
Yeah, well.
Gotta love it.
That's all going to be interesting.
Erica C. Barnett brought up that there have been several shootings, too, in the Central District, which makes this whole emphasis policing seem pretty farcical. Like, extra farcical if you have real violent crime that maybe is an aberration or spiking, and you're choosing to put policing in these places where maybe somebody's having their car pissed on or something stupid like that.
I mean, getting into the, I think you can't, like... there's no logical policies in fascism. Okay, so like Because what's the right answer there? More cops in the Central District? No. Cops are bad. So it doesn't have to make sense. This is it's all bullshit. So it's all just reactionary.
No, that's fair. And
bullshit.
And the people that want the police in their neighborhoods don't give a shit about violence in the Central District. They don't.
Well, as long as it doesn't show up where they are.
They don't care about that.
Yeah, and I think, too, this is basically... this is, counterinsurgency tactics, too, right? You flood an area with police, right? You have these wealthy people who want the area.
They're winning hearts and minds in white Seattle.
Yeah, you flood the area with police, and then you, as they talk about in this, you have the police, you attach all services in the area to the police, right? And, that's how you win the hearts and minds and all that kind of stuff.
And then
this is, literally straight out of... the Vietnam War, which went great. So.
Yeah, it's like in Afghanistan when they're gonna go. The cops are gonna go and talk to people in these neighborhoods, and they're gonna go they're gonna point a man walking down the street with worn shoes and be like, he is a terrorist, or he's with the Taliban. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Taliban over there. Taliban.
Well, it's like going into Fallujah, when Donald Rumsfeld told every kid over 10 as a militant, right?
Holy shit.
This is the same. It's not going to be at that level of violence, but the logic is the same. If you go to the neighborhood and you have a list of people who don't belong, right? Yeah. And so you flood it with police to remove those people. Then you create a network of informants in the neighborhood, which is all your community police relations, to hold the neighborhood afterwards. So that once you pull the soldiers back from the surge to surge in another neighborhood, you have all that network now that's built up that allow you to keep the elements from returning. Now keep in mind, this never fucking worked for the U.S. abroad, but it has never worked here either. It's never worked domestically either. But that's the model.
It worked to some degree in the Philippines, where the
in
level
1898 when they just killed everybody.
The level of violence and torture was truly unbelievable. And
it turns out you can't kill whole towns, and then the town is not a problem anymore.
Well, when they're not, when you see, that's the difference. So they tried that in Vietnam too. It didn't work ultimately because, for political reasons. I think. The Vietnamese people had an antidote to that, which was solidarity. They were politically educated to what was happening around them.
They had politics, right? In urban areas, the reason why, the NYPD were the first to really start using this tactic to try and retake Manhattan, and which they ultimately did, but at the same time, those elements of poverty and stuff they sought to wipe out still all exist because the city constantly creates them, right? The wealthy live in this illusionary world that, the homeless, A, choose to be homeless, B, aren't from here. and
aren't working.
Aren't working. And,
are on drugs.
Yeah, and that if you got rid of them, then that would be that. Right? But the problem is that you get rid of them and you just create another class of homeless people that will follow immediately. So even if you did what Safe Seattle wanted, and you put them in a concentration camp on McNeil Island, or just fucking dump them in the ocean, which I think is what they really want.
Yeah.
There would be a whole new class of homeless people being built over time, and in 10 years, it would look exactly the same, because the city is constantly creating them, right?
Yeah.
And that the urban environment creates them, right? And that's the reality.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so, this has all been fun. It'll continue to be fun. There'll be endless stories about this.
Back with you next week to talk about the next horrible fucking thing.
Yeah. The next homeless person that gets riddled with bullets by SPD or something when something goes wrong with this strategy.
Well, luckily, there's other lighthearted stories in the news, right?
Yeah, sure enough.
Yeah.
What do we want to talk about? We want to talk about
somebody we don't know very well, what do you call that? Stranger?
The stranger.
A stranger approaches.
A paper I've read for over 15 years, including when I lived in Los Angeles. A cultural mainstay, an institution of this town. An alt weekly that has influence nationally, even.
And it has produced, like, legitimately good reporters. And,
Absolutely,
yeah.
and unlike most cities' alt-weeklies that, like, literally only do the arts and entertainment beat, like, actually did real coverage.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
You know, did real coverage.
Yeah. There's, you know, yeah, I think we've talked about it before. It's going downhill in lots of ways. Part of that is economics of this business, like, whatever. There are still good people there doing good work. You know, we've had
Katie Herzog, number one.
Yeah. Rich Smith, who covers all politics, local, state, federal, global.
Yeah, and actually good. Do not associate with Katie Herzog.
Yeah.
Actually good.
He's great. We've had him on the show.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Charles Medidi still has a signature there, from which he can crank out the only unique takes on the entire internet, much less in, like, Seattle media. The only takes you will literally not read from anyone else. There's literally no one else that's true of. He's amazing. But, man, and I've said this probably on the podcast, but certainly to a lot of other people, Dan Savage, he went national a long time ago. I mean, his Savage Love column's been syndicated nationally forever. And he's been, you know, he has been hugely influential in, like, a new kind of, quote, sex-positive dialogue on talking about fucking in new and exciting ways. I think his work on that has been positive, and you know, in all its facets, largely. I'm sure there are subtler minds who would have even critiques about some of that too, but, like, you know, I've enjoyed that column, for example, for many years. But, like, his opinions on literally everything else are absolute fucking shit. And that's a good inroad into understanding The Stranger, because he rose to be editor of that paper. And now he's back as the, I forget his actual title, the, like, executive editor or something.
Yeah, it's something like that.
Well, he's clearly the heavyweight at The Stranger. He's the one with the national, you know, following. He's the, you know, if somebody's throwing weight around the office, it's him.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Which luckily he's never done it for anything bad. Hey, Colin, what's going on over there?
Well, let's prime this a little bit more. Like, just to reiterate, like, we've said this before, but, like, he's, I mean, everything, every dumb big city liberal shithead thing of the last 20 years, like, Dan Savage has, like, had a minor national platform for. He was a big Iraq war booster, famously. That's the thing people, like, unfairly still level at him to this day, because it's literally the worst thing you could possibly be. He's and he's, you know, like even most Republicans walked that back, of course, but big fucking deal. And now today he's a big, like, Russiagate obsessive, you know. On their podcast that he is on some of the time, you know, that's what they have him on to talk about, is getting in on the Trump stuff and, like, you know, the big Cheeto and whatever.
Well, he's that special kind of rich that, like, what passes for politics is, like, Robert Ludlum style fantasies that racism was invented in 2016, and that what a shock that America would elect a big dumb celebrity to be president, because that's definitely never happened before. You know,
the America that would, say, invade a country that did not attack it out of basically just jingoism and Islamophobia, like, that country,
and opportunity.
Yeah, and, like, could you imagine a guy like Donald Trump getting elected? Because that definitely didn't happen. Exactly, this happened in 1980. Like, the most popular president in America is definitely not a big dumb fucking actor who got elected for being the most racist guy available,
and who also very similarly had dementia.
Also was sundowning during his fucking presidency. Like we literally have had this president before. I don't know why everybody acts like this is a new thing. Like this exact fucking guy existed. I mean, arguably Trump has more charisma than Reagan ever did. But you know,
he has a more, like, hard strain of charisma. He has it's like the black tar shit.
He's the American id, really.
Yeah.
Oh, sure, yeah.
You know, Reagan's folksy charm took him a long way. His phony folksy charm, but that's Dan Savage. Like, you know, we're not gonna litigate everything he's ever said because we don't have to. Because there's this one particular example recently that illustrates a lot about the man.
Yeah, so I'll just add one tiny thing before getting into this. He kind of came under fire earlier last month in April in that Vanity Fair piece with Barry Weiss because he went out of his way to say, I'm friends with Barry and we don't agree on everything, but hey, who can't you say that about?
First off, support that Iraq War. I'll forgive you. Friends with Barry Weiss, you're canceled.
You're dead.
You're dead.
But this just tells you so much about Dan Savage that he is what he sees himself as, what he wants to be, what he's always wanted to be, and what he has made himself is a media maven. He wants to be of the intellectual media journalism class, and all he cares about is knowing and respecting those people. My God, this one episode of Blabbermouth I listened to, he's about to slightly, barely criticize something he read in the New York Times, and it wasn't really anything, but he had to preface it with, and let me just say, I love the New York Times. I read it every day. I've read it every day for 25 years, and he was serious. And you go oh, he reads that fucking front to cover every day, and that's why he has just the same New York liberal shithead opinion on everything. And what it's he's just kind of a dullard who knows a lot about dick, and dick about anything else, and he just takes it from people like Barry Weiss.
Man, brutal. So why are we talking about him right now? Well, you may remember it was probably about a year ago. There's a little kerfluffle with Dave Meinert, the big restaurateur,
restaurant mogul. Yeah,
5 Point
colonizer, gentrifier of the 90s. Yeah,
opportunist. But so his name kind of came up again because this past week, or at least the weekend of Cinco de Mayo, Crosscut Fest occurred, and there was a panel that included Sydney Brownstone,
formerly of The Stranger.
Actual
good journalist.
Yeah, fantastic journalist. She landed at KUOW, where she is doing great work, and
the first story she published there was this Dave Meinert thing.
Yeah.
Right?
So what came out in this panel, which did I mention was focused on Me Too, the Me Too movement, was that she broke a story about music and nightlife mogul Dave Meinert. She says there has to be trust between a reporter and an institution.
Well, tell us first about what that story is. The story she broke a year ago.
Yeah, was the scandal that he was forcing himself on women.
Yeah.
Some pretty extreme sexual harassment leading towards assault.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Improper
for years, and with lots of rumors for years.
Yeah.
And a few people came forward.
Yeah. Enough that it was not, there was a lot of smoke.
Oh, totally. So she came with the story, and so she said, there has to be trust between a reporter and an institution. My trust was already on shaky ground. My publisher came to me to say Meinert wanted to have lunch with him. So this was before, obviously, she could break the story. She ended up leaving to go to KUOW, where she broke the story, and where that story kind of took on a life of its own with more reports coming out, as we just mentioned.
I mean, so the piece that he wrote was basically, after she went to KUOW and published that, he came out in a piece covering his ass by saying, listen, I've been a friend with Dave Meinert for a long time. This isn't the Dave that I knew. I wouldn't have guessed this ever happened. That kind of thing. He wasn't he was not so much defending him as covering his own ass for not having, because everyone knows they have been tight for a long time. They're part of this Capitol Hill, investor class. So the story came out, and he was covering his ass, saying, like, because basically the obvious question is, like, why hasn't this story come out before? If there are all these rumors around, how does the stranger that's deep in that world, including Dan himself, not ever looked into this or published it? And that begs the question, going back years.
Yeah.
That begs the question, going back, why wasn't this story in The Stranger years ago? How did you not know about it? And this is Dan coming out going, like, immediately covering his tracks, going, like, I just had no idea, and I'm shocked by it and disgusted. What we heard rumors about at the time, and now what Sydney Brownstone seems to be indicating here is evidence that it's not quite that simple.
So should we give the long and the short of it, that Sydney wanted to write this piece and Dan wanted to kill it?
Yeah.
And that seems to be the long and the short of it, and that begs the question, as you brought up, if people have known about this forever, was there times in the past that people wanted to cover it and he stopped it or whatever, but who knows?
These are obvious
but
questions.
He certainly wanted to kill it this time.
Or at least Presh dragged his feet. Instead of her having support from the paper and it being interested in really getting to the bottom of something, it was Dan was, and maybe other people there, who knows, were about dragging their feet on it and waiting till they really had it, seeing if they really had to publish something,
Yeah. Well, it's important to note that basically her getting the story published coincides with her leaving The Stranger as well. Uh-huh. So, I mean, it's one of those things that's like putting the pieces together.
Yeah.
Obviously, The Stranger was hostile to the story.
And that's the same time
to the point of forcing a talented reporter to leave.
Yeah.
And maybe more than one.
Because this is what she's saying. She says she didn't trust The Stranger with the story.
Exactly. And up until
so she had to find another job to publish it, basically.
And up until this weekend, that had, as far as I know, that had never publicly been corroborated. That was merely conjecture or rumor. But David Croman of Crosscut would go on to tweet about that panel as well and say, the most interesting revelation so far, Sydney's comments on her not trusting The Stranger with the Dave Meinert story, which eventually published in KUOW, which, I mean, as far as I can tell, means this was the confirmation that there were butting heads.
That she quit over it, and that she literally got to a point where she didn't want to publish the story in The Stranger, and that this was, and you got to imagine that this was not this wasn't, if this couldn't be resolved, if these were like irreconcilable differences, like this isn't the first, like she said, her trust was thin with The Stranger anyway, and we don't know to what degree this is connected, but Heidi Groover left at the same time.
Yeah.
She
not long
so
after.
the timeline is basically like Brownstone had this story that didn't get published in The Stranger for about a month, at the end of which she announced she had a new job and left The Stranger, and then immediately the story came out.
Yeah.
So it seems like, and at the same time Heidi Groover also pieced out. So it seems like they were like, fuck this, started looking for other jobs, got them, and left. And because this being the last straw of like trying to do journalism at The Stranger.
Yeah.
Heidi Groover, another
good journalist, is now
this
gone.
This is just conjecture about her. I mean, we don't know. We just know that it happened at the same time. Yeah. She just left literally at almost exactly the same time.
Yeah, her and Sydney Brownstone are obviously good friends and used to have a fantastic podcast that we should go try and find. Yeah. But I mean, at some point, like, again, the smoke is pretty heavy in that area.
Yeah,
right?
Totally.
And so The Stranger loses two good reporters and is left with not a lot because the bullpen's pretty empty because they've let people go over money issues in the past and things like that. I know Dominic Holden was allowed to leave because of money issues and things like that, and another actual good reporter who took off.
Yeah. Well, and they're back. I mean, they're back at it now. This weekend, no reprieve for them. Mm-hmm. There was another Me Too moment.
Yeah.
With a journalist that we have mentioned on the show, Mike Rosenberg of the Times, made a tiny little faux pas, just a little minor impropriety. No, I'm just kidding. I I'm sure you've all seen this by now, but he's been suspended, and for good reason, for basically being lewd to another reporter online. And then sort of offering her $1,000 to a charity to just make it all go away.
Yeah. It's more, it's sleazy and pathetic.
It's extremely pathetic, and it's very disheartening because he was doing good work, but it's like
he's part of
this sucks,
the
man.
Team.
Like,
he's one of the main people on the homeless the housing team at Seattle Times, which is doing because they have like a beat that they're focused on, which is like rare in newspapers. They're basically experts on the issue, and they're reporting, and he does really good work. He's had a great Twitter feed too.
Yeah, he has. Yeah.
That just fucking sucks that he, turns out to
be a creep,
a sex pest.
It's so gross.
Yeah, it's extremely disgusting.
Yeah, and to be clear, if people haven't seen the tweets, that basically he's talking to this woman who is like an independent journalist.
Yeah.
I think it's safe to say implies that he can help her with her career before then saying,
or at least flatters that he,
Yeah. I mean, in before then saying some rather disgusting shit to her. The sad part is it seems like that's not uncommon. In journalism, right?
Right.
Well, it's like what you were saying is like so many in this dog shit economy. Mm-hmm. So many any job you would actually want to do, like an ambitious, like thoughtful person would actually want to do, is now like part of the desire economy, and that is inevitably a venue for this kind of sexual harassment, if not worse.
Yeah.
Just like basically being a journalist is like wanting to be a journalist now is like wanting to be an actor.
Yeah,
it's like, there's only room for a few people.
The casting couch.
And this is like,
casting couch.
Of course, this is someone who had no power probably to help her career, but that's not what it's about. He's trying a lame tactic. Like it was never gonna work. Also.
Yeah, and I mean the tactic fell on its face, and she published it. So that's both funny and sad. But, I mean, has it worked in the past? Who knows, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But, the thing...
Or have people at least gotten away with, like, just acting like that and even if, didn't get beyond that, like...
Well, and it shows how the power differences, under capitalism, right?
Yeah.
How those power differences set people up to be victimized, right?
Yeah.
They set people up for these kind of situations, right? Because...
Where someone with even just a tiny bit more power than you can feel like they can use that power, whether that it's misplaced or not, like even just practically. He had that feeling, at least in that moment, like he could use that tiny bit of greater power he had in that situation to be a creep, and then probably gets worse from there.
Yeah. Well, this story had sort of amazing, to me, legs because it was totally coast to coast, because this writer, Talia Jane, is her name. She's based out of New York City. And so, like, Twitter in Seattle, Twitter in New York, everyone's been talking about this.
Yeah, they're both reporters. Like, if we know anything about reporters, it's that they really can only identify with their own kind. I think there are a lot of other people out there being... harassed and abused that doesn't get this kind of coverage. But.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. But this has also, I think, gained some traction just from the power of the Me Too movement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and Talia also, being a reporter, like, wrote about it very well on Twitter and, like, laid out this very kind of elaborate trap form, essentially, on Twitter.
Yeah.
That is, like, entertaining to follow. I mean, the story sort of, like, writes itself in a lot of ways. So I think it caught on for all those reasons.
Definitely.
And I think that she posted the receipts, which were pretty, awful to read.
Yeah.
That little bit of schadenfreude watching this guy get, screwed over. Right?
Yeah.
First off, do these people not understand that when you do things online that exists forever? That can be like screen capped and like posts. I don't understand this. Well, this is the craziest thing.
Totally, and that's why it feels like it has to be intentional, or as we'll get into, an accident, in scare quotes.
Every second that passes by that Mike is not showing anything, I think is proof that it's not an accident.
I agree. And the reaction afterwards is pretty telling.
And this will come up.
This will come up.
Okay, so, really, it's just a gross story that sucks in all ways.
Yeah, it sucks for everybody.
The reason we want to talk about it, because we're still on the theme of how much The Stranger just...
Whenever there's a gross story, a person from The Stranger swoops in.
A very certain person.
An individual swoops in.
To clarify. To look into the orb of truth and mete out, judgment on either side, and yet somehow still find a contrarian position on literally everything. And just find a way to ask us about everything. Like, do we really know the truth of... And it's like... the obvious response is, well, do the fucking reporting, Katie. Jesus.
Yeah, so if you didn't put that together, we're talking about the old Herzog.
Mm-hmm.
She ate some more shoe this weekend. Being the clickbait queen, she quickly put something out to kind of loosely describe the transcript that occurred in the DMs, and then basically to spend the latter half of her piece talking about how doing a thought experiment.
How we don't really know any of the details of this. We don't know that it really could have been an accident.
We don't know what preceded the text we saw. We don't. It could be an accident. I've talked to people I know who've accidentally texted people things that weren't meant for them.
A list of hypotheticals.
Yeah, basically. And the thing is, we know this, there is no way to find any of this information out, right?
No, it's just so the woman, Talia, she has been pretty active on Twitter since this occurred, and Erica C. Barnett and many other folks were taking Katie to task today for this particular piece.
This dog shit article.
Yeah, even Goldie calling her, essentially brain dead.
Who worked at The Stranger.
Yeah.
And so she says, well, yeah, I mean, these are all questions, but I could have answered them if you just fucking asked me.
It's called reporting. But this is Katie Herzog. Yeah. It's not about that. It's about, in the moment, it's clickbait. And this is her clickbait beat. She's like, but what if everything? And what she doesn't get is that at the end of the day, she's just... By doing that, all she's doing is looking like an idiot and an asshole who's standing for creeps and fascists. Yeah. If you get in it with her and pick apart and try to get onto her level, no, of course that's not what she's doing. No, she's not a right-winger. She's a epistemology junkie. Mm-hmm. Who just doesn't want us all to jump to conclusions. Yeah. And it's like the whole thing, the whole piece, which I don't know, maybe we should read a couple of choice quotes from. It just adds up to zero. She says nothing, but that's how little she says while still just being stupid and offensive, that it went like that. Her fucking piece went fucking national with people dragging it, and it's utterly pointless. She says nothing in it that adds to anything, except just maybe it didn't happen. And then she's like, yeah, they were probably right for all these reasons to suspend him, and then to find out and investigate the truth of it all. Again, she could have. But, she tries to find the contrarian position of well, do we really want our bosses being the people who litigate this stuff that happens outside of work? And it's that could even be a good point or an interesting question, but she goes nowhere with it. There's no analysis.
No, you're just supposed to get the points for raising the question at all.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's she's
she'll never think of us to take a stand.
I'm just
on
asking questions. She takes a stand on nothing in it. Yeah. I'm just asking questions. She's not asking questions of any of the people involved. She's just asking questions of us all about our feelings about it all.
No, she's the Joe Rogan of journalism, and that she's just asking questions and just doing this clickbaity contrarian bullshit And I look forward to her turn to the alt-right just like Joe's. but she's already best friends with Jordan Peterson, so she's halfway there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And you're right. Like, I mean, she raises the point of, like, should your boss be the arbiter of, like, what you do in your home life? Which is absolutely a good point for any case that isn't this one where he's specifically leveraging his job to abuse somebody.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you chose, like, the worst possible case.
Of course, she
like,
has this contrarian take on that, too, where she's like, well... She goes through the details of, like, well, he's really just a staff reporter at a local paper. He doesn't have any power. She goes through the intricacies of the journalism business and how, like, really he has no power here. And it's like you said earlier, that doesn't matter at all. What do you say about, like, it's like if the con man doesn't have the musical instruments?
Yeah, the guy doesn't have the band instruments. It doesn't matter. He still stole your money. Like, his intentions to follow through are not, like, the part of the crime, right? And, like, it doesn't matter. Like, the fact that he wasn't going to help her in any way, had he been able to pull off this stunt, would have just made it worse. Like,
exactly.
Again, like, it has nothing to do with the...
To your point about these power imbalances, that is how fucked we are under capitalism, that this infinitesimally small power imbalance between this staff writer at a local paper and a freelance journalist earlier in a career is so small and really worthless, but still, just carrying just the hope that someone in this world could give you even the tiniest nudge up, just a contact inside the system. That's what... Because you don't have that, and you need it.
Yeah.
And
well, when the door is always shut on you, just the idea that somebody might crack it a little...
Might open the peephole and stick their dick through it like a glory hole.
Mike's case. But yeah, like, I mean, the offer in any way for any help is, I mean...
Could be, potentially, like, something. Now, in this case, she's... a lot smarter and has, like, a strong gag reflex.
Well, like, I mean, Katie's point seems to be that because Talia was smart enough to realize that Mike was full of shit, that therefore it's not a crime. Or therefore it's not bad or unethical or something like that.
Well, she's just asking questions, Brian. Okay.
I'm sorry. She doesn't come down on anything. She just always has the same point of view. but yeah, I mean, it's fucking stupid. Like, and again, and I think you're right. I think that in the Twitter parlance, if you looked at Katie's brain, it's just perfectly smooth. Like, I mean, it just. Who looks for and she's like, well, I got a lot of clicks doing this thing, so now I'm just, keeps hitting the button.
She has no worldview except...
It's her fetish.
Except this, like, journalistic epistemology fetish. And so she is, I think, aesthetically progressive. You know what I mean? Like, she...
Sure.
On the things that she understands to be, like, vaguely... left, she thinks that's where she is, and some of the things she is into, but like it's all part of her aesthetic identity, because when you actually read her writing, she clearly has no analysis or worldview about anything, which again, she's like, I guess I'm the only alt writer who stumps for Elizabeth Warren, and it's like, yeah, look, she has some like good like political like opinions on some basic things, but it's not backed up by fucking anything, and which means like it amounts to nothing, and there's no reason for her to be writing about anything because she can't fucking manage to say anything. All she managed to do is look like an idiot.
Yeah. Well, there's a few things I wanted to say, too. One, there's a Katie Herzog sort of bingo where she does the textualist Scalia thing of, he never literally says that he's going to offer her a job. So,
luckily we know that in language nothing's ever implied.
But that is just all.
There's never subtext.
That's just one of her like litany.
That's one of her
picking
favorite
it
moves.
apart. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, straight like the Jordan Peterson article. Like that was like
it in a nutshell.
That was just all this textualist like. Yeah. Like, there's no subtext at all.
He doesn't literally say that he's a Nazi, so he's not a Nazi.
In fact, he actually says he's not a Nazi. So, right?
Would a real Nazi say they weren't a Nazi?
No.
God. But, like, that's
Checkmate.
you wonder, like, is she capable of, like, enjoying a novel? Or
does she
or a
even read?
movie? Because she literally has no sense for subtext at all.
No, not at all. So I did something really stupid. This is a bit of a tangent, but it is related. I listened to her appearance on Jamie Kilstein's podcast. I don't know if it has a name. This is the only episode I listened to. And it was horrific. But in it, which is funny, she talks about how she's really striving to only punch up. And she and Jamie Kilstein are essentially talking about how they are galaxy brain centrists and they can talk to people on either side of the aisle and there's no change.
So can everyone in America.
Well, exactly, but so
They think that's so special.
they do, and so that's the thing. So thinking about her, I think this is just the thing that gets her going. It's like the fact that she thinks she can see the world from both sides is like this like special thing that she has, when really, I mean, like we just said, this is all hypotheticals. There's nothing to doing both sidesism.
Everyone in
But
America.
this is her goal.
No, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
She thinks that is
Like, this is the reason to do it.
She thinks that's a superpower.
To go, guess what? There's gray area. Like, got you, motherfuckers, on the polls. That's her thing. Like, that's the bit.
What she doesn't get is everyone in America can and does talk to people of like absolute opposite political persuasion. Everyone has family, everyone has friends, everyone does. That's a normal human thing. Some people, smart people who write about social issues and politics or think about these things with subtler minds than hers, can and do see things from both sides, can understand where people of other political persuasions are coming from, can see why they have the opinions they do, can understand what they are, where their feelings come from. She has never shown any evidence of that. That is a possible thing that you can do. When you can do that, like that's not a superpower. The rest of us we all see the gray areas, and we talk about the important shit instead. Okay, the gray areas is the shit that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
that's with like her beat is the shit that doesn't fucking matter.
Well, sure. Well, and her both sidism is that like very particular liberal like bug of both sidism, which is that look, I can look at both sides and realize they're both like morally neutral and like you know, it's like it's not that other people don't see or like I think a lot of people understand like what the alt-right is about. They just see them as repugnant.
Bad.
Yeah, like because they know what they're about, they find them to be repugnant.
Yes, and because leftists have a worldview and analysis and a moral foundation, they believe things strongly.
Yeah.
And want Nazis to jump off a bridge.
But in the case of this too, like, you know, having been like a man for 37 years, I get what Mike's up to. Like I read it still, like I understand what he's up to. I just understand it to be awful. And I understand that he knows it's awful too, which is why he's
and she will say, and
it's not subtle. This is not a subtle case. So I feel like that's the problem. Is Katie like chooses the most harebrained, like idiot cases to do these things.
No, but then all she does is like this term paper, this high school term paper litany of shit. She's like, well, it could be this, and then this. She did like a brainstorm board. Everything she thought she just lists instead of having a fucking point.
She's a land of contrast. Right?
She could, seriously, she could have done this. She could have sat down and really dug deep on this question of, should our bosses be the people who litigate this shit? Should the reporting people to their employers, is that the way to go? And taken that in a lot of different directions and thought about it in a lot of different ways in possible better futures and ways to organize things, problems with that, whatever. She doesn't do that at all. She just says, I don't know, is that really what we want? And then lists all this stuff that undermines the credibility of, like, this as a topic to even talk about. Like, are there any good gems to read in there that are really just like...
I mean, not really.
Did she mention the exports and imports of
It's garbage. It's not worth reading. I mean, it really is just her trying to do a Sherlock Holmes fucking bit in her brain. And
but I think it should be clear too. A case of bad writer.
Oh, she's
not interesting to read.
Oh my
God,
she's
bad.
awful.
Well, like I said, it's just a litany.
It's
The first half of this article
yeah.
is this just.
It reads like a bad undergrad's paper.
Yeah, it's just like a bad rehash of the thing that doesn't get at anything. She's just okay, just to fill you up on the basic details, basically. Not just to get it out of the way, I can go into my weird brainstorm.
But yeah, I mean, which is what makes it all the more galling that she, and let's be serious, the stranger is taking a spot of somebody who could be doing good writing.
Yeah,
because she's just a bad writer from the technical sense, and her takes are dog shit.
Totally.
But she gets more clicks than a good writer probably would. And
she's gone fucking national, man.
And that's why papers are fucking doomed.
Completely.
And I mean, and The Stranger will just become as bad as every other, arts magazine or whatever, weekly arts magazine in any other city. It's going to cover nothing, and what little bit it does will just be these harebrained takes.
Yeah, well, and they're selling whatever credibility they had down the river with her. Every time she writes one of these, they just look worse.
By the way, I mean, given kind of our conversation about Dan earlier, you can totally see why Dan Savage probably loves Katie Herzog. I feel like they are a little bit peas in the pod, and I think that he also is very dumb. When it comes to politics and things like that, I think he's also very dumb. He probably agrees with her. Yeah, he's probably just there are two sides.
Yeah. Well, that's
good, what a good point.
That is what he said about Barry. That's exactly what he said about Barry.
Yeah.
Congratulate me. I view this person as human because I can't see the moral difference.
Yeah.
Right? I can't see that Barry Weiss is a dangerous racist shill.
Well,
the things that she does actually could lead to people getting hurt.
That she is
but and I mean, Dan Savage, I mean, he looks at this story too, I'm sure, and it's this guy says something. And this woman says something.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's really a he said, she said.
Yeah, what can you do? We've covered it.
Yeah.
And, it is... I mean, it's so bad. If a kid turned that in as a term paper, you'd be like, this is bad, you need to rewrite it.
No,
you actually do have to make a choice here. You need to make a decision on
it's
what you
horrific.
believe.
And I don't think she's going to go unless she goes of her own accord.
She'll get promoted out of The Stranger. She'll be a New York Times columnist probably in 3 years, 4 years.
I did learn something interesting from this podcast. She's moved out of Seattle. She lives on the peninsula now, or will be living on the peninsula very soon.
I hope that earthquake comes.
The Olympic Peninsula?
The Olympic Peninsula.
Come on, earthquake.
No, wait. That's going to kill us, too.
I'm all in love with it.
We've all decided it's fine.
It's fine. But, I mean, she'll get promoted out of The Stranger if she had. But, I mean, it's hard to even tell she has ambition, to be honest. But
I think she's just enjoying being what she thinks of, and again, funny enough, what Vanity Fair thinks of Barry Weiss, a provocateur.
Sure.
That she'll even say, I can't remember.
I'm sure all her friends let her know that she's very brave all the time.
Okay,
oh, yeah.
This is brave right here. I suspect that not so long ago, the response among most employers to charges that someone inappropriately hit on someone outside of work would be, who cares? Now get back to work. The downside of this hands-off attitude is that it may protect and enable workers who act unethically, but still, do we really want bosses to be in the business of penalizing people for what they do off the clock? I say no, but plenty of other people would probably say yes.
So that is land of contrast. It's really exactly what it is.
You just said nothing.
It's some people believe this, others believe this.
I don't know what I believe. That's
you, right?
All she's saying is, I can see all possible sides.
Yeah, she thinks she's like Neo, the rest of us are.
I have a third
Matrix.
eye that sees the third way clearly.
Exactly.
And again, I mean, there is an interesting story to tell there, right? Where you could be like, yeah, maybe this is bad, but in this particular case, where you leverage your job to do the harassing, that makes it actually something different. That does involve your employer.
Or that.
But in another case, which happens all the time, these cases are bad.
This is a bad solution for this in our society
sure.
because other factors in our society are very bad and that need to be fixed. Some kind of structure needs to change so that this isn't, that is larger, that also solves this problem and doesn't give this undue power to employers. But under capitalism, employers are the only thing that matters. So
completely.
You know?
Well, yeah, and as we mentioned, like, about the power differential, imagine, as many women I saw on Twitter were saying, like, imagine if you did work under him and this happened to you, how closed off you would most likely feel from turning him in or taking any action like Talia was able to do, not being under his aegis, I guess, in any sense.
Right. So she was free from this because she's on the other side of the continent, like an up-and-coming freelance writer in New York into whose DMs had slided this slimy little hobbit from the Northwest, from like
cherubic,
he's dog shit to her, but yeah, exactly, has obviously there are an infinite number of cases that's not the case,
right?
Literally, probably happening right now, and maybe even from Mike Rosenberg. We don't know.
We'll probably see. One funny thing that I forgot to mention to cap this off is that Katie, for some reason, picked a picture of the Seattle Times that looks like something the Allies would have blown up in, like, 1945.
Right, no, it's this is the Seattle Times. The caption is, "This is the Seattle Times before the internet killed the newspaper business and reporters hit on each other in person." Which is to say, kids today, just give me a coffee,
she definitely watched Mad Men and thought, like, the guys in it were cool. She was like, those guys are really cool. Like, what a cool place to work. Cool dudes.
But like but don't you get it? Like, she's able to take herself out of the cultural moment and like see things with detachment. And, like,
she can see all the contrasts.
Right. Exactly. She can see things from different perspectives, including temporally. And it's like, the great part about it is she thinks that is a unique, like, gift she has that all the people who hate her don't.
Well, when she looks on the world, it's like a kaleidoscope of colors just stretching to infinity. She's like, I see it all. It's all in front of me.
Oh, God. Alright. This is like, you know what it is? She is an admitted, like, massive pothead. And this shit is very, like, she's having the dorm room conversation with herself. Over and over. She's like, yeah, but what if, like, and what?
She's like, good point, Katie.
It's like Smeagol, like the great scenes where he changes eyeline direction back and forth, and like that's Katie in her room with herself and a laptop, is just having this stoned out of her mind, having this like. Thinking she's blowing her own mind, like, back and forth over and over again. Fucking dummy.
Well, admittedly for her, it's a great gig, because these articles must take 30 minutes, 45 minutes to write. So it's, we'll call it a full hour of work a week, and probably makes more than all the reporters on staff. So, I mean...
Yeah.
I guess good for her for finding a sweet grift to just fucking sign on to.
Well, she's basically a collaborator. Christ. I mean, that's what she doesn't understand. All she does is carry water for people that want her to be marginalized, that want her to be destroyed.
And I get it. Like, that's not your intention to carry water for those people, Katie.
But that doesn't matter. But at some point, intentions,
that doesn't matter. Like, you don't come off smart. You look like an idiot and a jerk, and like you're standing for fascists.
Well, the problem is there are enough fascists
creeps in this case.
Say, Katie, this rocks, and like...
fascism does not have an ideology. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. This type of centrist, like, supposedly whatever, who doesn't actually have any worldview, who's just about, like, arguing things back and forth, is a perfect tool for that. And it is a grift. And that, like, to me, like, the progression of fascism is grift to coup to filibuster. And, like, we're in the grift stage, like, there's a lot of grifters out there now, and, like, she's just a low-level one who doesn't know what she's doing, you know, but, like, anyway.
Yeah, so The Stranger rocks. You should read it. Read Katie Herzog.
Yeah, check her column out every week. It's pretty good.
Listen to Blabbermouth, and listen to the shit that comes out of Eli Sanders' mouth. Like, again...
well, we have to make a whole other podcast about Eli Sanders. His obsession, no. His obsession with the fact that Antifa is actually the Ku Klux Klan, which he just will not drop, because for him the defining feature of the Klan, like, the Klan literally wear masks. Yeah, he's like, they wear masks just like the Klan. Nobody else. On Halloween, Eli Sanders must walk outside and go Klan and run back in his house. Like, it's like, well, the Klan did things other than wear masks. I think that might have been the defining feature of them. But he's an absolute fucking moron. But
well, god damn it, these people
are
awful.
Jesus. Okay. Well, yeah. Was there anything else we wanted to touch on in this? Or...
No, I think we.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
This is all anybody should ever talk about The Stranger.
Yeah.
Done.
No kidding. So,
seriously,
I wish. Well, go read Sydney Brownstone and KUOW. Read Heidi Gruber in Seattle Times.
Read Rich Smith and Charles Medidi in The Stranger.
Yes, definitely read. Check them out.
Don't read anything else in The Stranger.
Well, that's a little
other good reporters who used to work at The Stranger. Bethany Jean Clement is also writing writing foods and other stuff. I'm sure
she just wrote about Canless extensively because the chef won a James Beard Award.
Oh, really? So yeah, she's at the Times. Where's Dominic Holden now?
He works at some of these internet things in New York. I think he was at BuzzFeed for a second, but I imagine got fired.
Paul Constant is at that
Civic Skunk Works.
Yeah, with what's the guy, the rich guy,
Nick Hanauer.
Nick Hanauer. He does the podcast with him.
That's Goldie. Goldie does the podcast.
And Goldie.
Oh, they both do? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the three of them, I thought.
Okay, yeah, it could be.
And you know what? It's not bad.
No, it's good stuff.
It's pretty good. They're liberals, but like they're not. They're like, that good liberal that does exist. They're just rare.
Brain dead.
Yeah, no, they may. They're.
Well, just think if you see Stranger on somebody's, CV or whatever, that's probably a good thing and not a bad thing. So,
yeah.
The fact that they used to work there is probably a good sign. The fact they don't work there anymore is probably a better sign. So go ahead and pick that up and read it. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well,
do we have any?
No. We don't have anyone to thank.
Even though we've been diligently putting out
fresh content.
We've been in these content lines for so long, swinging our axes against the content, or
only the light of a Katie Herzog tweet to light our way.
Oh my god! All right.
That is some bleak shit. But yeah, give us your money, please.
Bye, everybody.
Did I do good? Well, thank you again, Brian, for being on the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
You're very welcome. And as Greg said, listeners, be prepared to hear more of Brian in the future.
Yeah, now that I live on the boat, it's my boat. Squatters' rights.
Well,
No. There's plenty of other boats in this marina for you to live on. Okay?
We did a mutiny.
That is true,
buddy.
That is true.
You gotta go find a ship to say.
Oh fuck.
All right. Till next time.